Okay, we'll go ahead and get started for our June 25th Planning Commission meeting. And if all of you would follow me in the flag salute.
The flag right behind me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll go ahead and do roll call. Kathy?
Mr. Sevison, absent. Mr. Gray,
Present.
Mr. Moss,
Here.
Mr. Johnson,
Here.
Mr. Nader,
Here.
Mr. Ricucci,
Here.
Mr. Denayo.
Here. Okay, we'll have our report from the planning director, EJ.
Good morning, commissioners. Very happy to be up here in Tahoe today outside of the scorching temperatures in western Placer County, so I hope you all feel the same. Looking at our agenda today, there are just a couple notes. One, there's a consent item that we are asking you to drop from the agenda. We need to do a renotice on that, and so when you get to that item, we'll ask you to do that, and then we'll take that up at the next Planning Commission hearing. Speaking of next Planning Commission hearings, we expect to only have one commission hearing in July. That will be in Auburn on July 23rd, which means that the July 9th meeting will be canceled. And then also, the chairman's already mentioned it, but for those in the audience, there is a sign-in sheet for one of our items on the agenda today for the Squaw Valley Draft EIR public comment. Feel free to sign in on that list, and then you'll be called by name at such time to come up to the podium. Just another, on a side note, everybody's aware that the Tahoe Basin Area Plan is out for public review and the NOP. Any comments due on that need to be submitted by August 3rd by 5 p.m. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, and if not.
Okay, well, on the consent agenda item, yeah, I guess, do we need to make a formal motion for that? Okay, do I have a motion?
I make the motion that we
Drop it.
drop the consent item
Second.
until a later date.
Okay, I have a motion, a second. Roll call.
Mr. Sevison's absent. Mr. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Moss,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Nader.
Yes.
Mr. Ricucci.
Yes.
Mr. Denayo.
Yes, okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead to our 10:05 item, Village at Squaw Valley. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I always tell them to keep me on track. Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead to public comment, and I think there is one gentleman that wanted to speak. So just come up, state your name, and tell us what you got.
Good morning. My name is John Corda. There's 4 others besides me here, and this is something I just wanted to bring out about the hotel in Tahoe City. I call it the Pepper Tree Cell Tower and Inn, located in the heart of Tahoe City. Enjoy the beauty of our small town. I filed some complaints with Placer County in November of 13, another one on 6/25/14, about issues that are not up to code, and also design review problems. There's electrical meters on the bottom of Pioneer that are 800 amps of service. They are in the county right-of-way. There's no bollards in front of them. A car could come down the hill, run into them. It's in the county right-of-way. I can't believe that Placer County would do that. They then added 3 poles with transformers while the downtown goes underground. Is that allowed by Placer County to install electrical service not on your property and in the county right-of-way? Should be addressed prior to any new permits. They keep having new permits to keep upgrading and making the cell towers stronger, but yet nothing ever seems to happen to bring these things up to code. The Pepper Tree has a concrete pad with a dumpster that isn't even on their property. On the corner of Bliss and Pioneer. Is that allowed by Placer County to put your dumpster off your property and in Placer County right-of-way? On projects I have been involved with in Tahoe City, your design review has always required screening and located on the property owner's land. Another minor point is the added coverage with TRPA should be addressed prior to any new permits. Your design review standards are very serious about lighting and how it affects the surrounding area. There are 4 old-style street lights on the back of the building. Seems to me that any new permit approval should address this horrible situation with approved fixtures. There is a large flue pipe running through a roof and strapped to the side of a roof. Once again, not very attractive and should be brought into compliance with any new permits. I'm sure design review has appropriate standards. Now to more serious matters. The gas meter enclosure on the back of the building on Bliss Court is also unsightly and would like design and review to recommend something in their guidelines with any new permits. Building and Public Safety Department should also look into this potential for a major gas leak and possible explosive scenario being next to a hotel. The main gas feeds from the meter are in the dirt and laying on the ground exposed. The lines could rust, which I think they're starting to. They already have moss growing around the pipes. They are also about 6 feet off Bliss Court and could be ruptured by snow removal efforts, traffic, or ice from the roof. Both the meter and the piping are on the shedding north side of the building. The auxiliary cell tower equipment and conduit for the equipment, there are thousands of feet of chaseways and conduit on the back of the building. There are fan units bolted to the back of the building, fan terminations, support brackets. My research states that the utility easement is a 1.5 utility easement, and some of the equipment is definitely outside this easement. Any new permit should address this eyesore and possible violations. Design review probably has ideas on how to fix this. There is also a pretty consistent hum and noise from all this equipment and equipment rooms. There is a Placer County code that states any such installations must be found not to create the potential for adverse noise. Well, it does. BMPs, dirt off tracking. I've been fined because I'm a builder for not driving off paved surface in the winter. There's an example of that. There are 23 antenna towers on this building, and they want to upgrade. I hope that the county would look into this. I see 15 from my properties on Bliss Court with associated equipment and conduit and chaseways. The safety from the electromagnetic fields will be addressed. Design review approvals are required for permits, and I hope you investigate what is happening to the back of this building and my neighborhood. There is also a Placer County code stating all auxiliary equipment should be located inside the building, and here it's strapped to the outside of the building. Other Placer County codes that are also of concern of violations are, it states that they should be 30 inches away from any available public, while the hotel rooms are within 30 inches of this. The public health and safety. These units have tons of batteries. I don't even know how many batteries there are, but it's very hazardous materials. Are they built right? I see the conduits and stuff are not up to code, so I wonder if this is code in there. Is containment adequate? Has North Tahoe Fire approved this hazardous material? Have the electromagnetic frequencies and radio frequency been measured? Are they within a safe range and safe for the public? Why are they upgrading? And does this mean larger and more powerful EMF and RF? Residents in the neighborhood experience symptoms of EMF and RF exposure.
Just to shorten things up, it sounds like you're giving us all these codes and stuff, and you said you filed a complaint. Now, did you with code enforcement?
Yes, with everyone.
Okay, have they responded back to you yet?
No, sir.
Okay, because if you gave them all the information, maybe the easiest thing is to go ahead, name, address, and stuff, and you can give it to Kathy, and she can make sure it gets to the appropriate and stuff, because going through each code violation, we're not code enforcement people.
I understand
but
that.
if they come out, they should look at the whole thing, and really at this point, we're just taking information in, and that
I
would
appreciate
speed
that.
things up
Thank you.
for us and for you. But if you get that to them, then you know.
I just
they'll be
want to make sure that people
follow.
realize there's 23 antennas on this hotel. Thank you.
Okay, and that way, if there's any violations, then just let them know you want some kind of response that they've looked into it. Because usually when code enforcement comes out, they look at everything, but if you've got written down all the things that you think are violations, they'll look at it.
I got an email today that said there are no violations. I sent them back and said I can show you 10, so maybe they'll meet me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the public that wants to speak on anything other than what's on our agenda today? Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and move to our 10:05 item, Village at Squaw Valley Specific Plan, Draft Environmental Impact Report, Public Review and Comment. Now, I know there's a lot of people that want to comment on this. I can't stress enough, is what we're talking about is the public review and comment on the environmental document, not if it's a good project, bad project, whatever. So if you start getting off track, I'll probably tell you, okay, that's nothing to do with the environmental document. And also, there will only be 3 minutes for everybody to speak. So make sure it's concise and complete, and if you're getting up just to reaffirm what the person in front of you said, that's all you have to say. Because I don't want to hear the same thing 30 times today. I think all of us are astute enough to hear what you say the first time. So with that, I'm going to have Alex Fish go ahead and get started.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of the commission, everyone in attendance. I'm Alex Fish with the Placer County Planning Services Division. And as the chairman stated, the purpose of this morning's hearing is to take public comments on the completeness and accuracy of the draft EIR analysis that the county has prepared for the Village at Squaw Valley Specific Plan project. I'll just go over real briefly some of the background on the project, a little short presentation on the project description, and then we'll get into the significant findings of the analysis in brief. We are presently in the 60-day public review period that runs between May 18th and July 17th. Just a reminder to everyone, we are only receiving comments at this hearing. All of your comments will be responded to in the final EIR. You're certainly welcome to also submit comments in writing, which is preferable. I do have the county's environmental consultant on hand today, Ascent Environmental, Sean Bechta and Gary Jacobs are here. They're taking notes on comments. We also have a court reporter here taking stenographic notes of the hearing. And last thing to remind everyone is if you could also please keep your comments specific to the impact analyses of the draft EIR. That'll help us move things along today. We're not discussing the merits of the project. We will do that at later hearings, also before the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors. So up here I have just a brief listing of the notification process that we followed for this EIR. I won't go over it in detail, but in short, we did post notice in 4 newspapers. We also did a county press release, notified all the persons that commented on the notice of preparation or that let us know after that point that they would like to receive notice of the draft EIR. So project location, I think everyone is familiar with, is the community of Olympic Valley, also known as Squaw Valley, about 9 miles south of Truckee, 7 miles north of Tahoe City. This is the main project area here, this 85-acre portion at the west end of the valley, about 1.7 miles or so in from State Route 89. About a third of a mile in from State Route 89 is this portion of the plan area, about an 8.8-acre piece referred to as the east parcel. The plan area consists of a total of just under 94 acres. The development lots would primarily be located out here in the parking lots that are existing. There is some development in areas that is previously undisturbed, but the majority of the disturbance would be already disturbed areas. Some of the major surrounding land uses that this project nests in with include the existing Interwest Village, We have Squaw Valley Lodge over here, Red Wolf Timeshares. We do have the, I should point this out for the commission, by the way, we have 2 screens today. The Far East Maintenance Center is the resort facilities for the resort operations down here. This is the Olympic Village Inn and the Olympic Village Lodge up here, which is within the project area. Over at the east parcel, as I said, we're about a mile and a half east of the main plan area, a third of a mile in from State Route 89. Major surrounding land uses include residents on the north and west sides of the east parcel. We have Squaw Creek coming along the back side here. This is Squaw Valley Road running through this portion of the plan area. Squaw Valley Public Service District offices, tavern and condominiums over here. This is the most recent illustrative concept plan for the project. As you can see, the project is divided into 2 main plan areas within the main village, and that is the village commercial core, this area here. Thank you. That'll be helpful. I like it. That's very helpful. And that's the higher density portion of the plan area. Lodging units are proposed to include approximately 517 units, about 880 bedrooms, and 220,000 square feet of total commercial uses, including the 90,000 square foot Mountain Adventure Center. We also have the village commercial neighborhood portion over here in the northeastern part of the plan area. That's a lower intensity portion of the plan area. Would also include condominium hotels, timeshare units, and fractional ownership residential cabins up here on the hillside. The plan, part of its overarching concept is to link the overall main village area with an open space pedestrian network. You can see elements of that linking through here. There is a Class 1 trail that goes through the plan area here along the north side of Squaw Creek. There are also several pedestrian pathways through the village areas. There's a continuation of the Class 1 trail along the north side of Squaw Creek over here in the village commercial neighborhood as well. And there would be several connections to the existing recreational trail network in the resort area and surrounding area and the hillsides, the mountains that would also be enhanced with the project. I shouldn't forget to mention the east parcel land uses would include off-site intercept parking for employees. There's about 540 parking spaces there in 1 level of surface parking and 1 level of structured parking above. There would also be a 5,000 square foot retail market, 15,000 square foot shipping and receiving facility, and employee housing for up to 300 employees. Notably, the plan area also includes retention of 3,100 day skier parking spaces through all phases of development. This is just a close-up of the east parcel. One of the marquee elements, so to speak, of the plan area is a proposed restoration of Squaw Creek. This creek is severely impacted by the creation of this, what's referred to as the trapezoidal channel that was constructed in preparation for the 1960s Winter Olympics. And in short, what's happened is the energy that is created from this straight chute of stream has a number of deleterious adverse impacts downstream for sediment transport and loading and overall water quality. We have some similar issues over here with the Olympic Channel on the east side of the plan area. And with restoration of the creek, we would have a restoration of a more natural stream hydrology and morphology, sediment deposition and transport conditions. I should mention also that part of the improvement plan for the restoration of Squaw Creek is to implement a linear park along the creek corridor. I would mention included with that is a public trailhead staging area with flush restrooms and parking over here for Granite Chief and Shirley Canyon trailheads. And there would be another flush restrooms and parking for the other Shirley Canyon trailhead location. This slide just gives you an orientation showing the black boundary, by the way, is the outline of the plan area. You can pick that out from the surrounding land uses. And you'll notice that under the existing Squaw Valley General Plan Land Use Ordinance, the preponderance of the plan area is village commercial. It encompasses about 53 acres of the plan area. We also have about 2.7 acres of heavy commercial. In total, there's around 10 acres of high-density residential in 25 bedrooms per acre and 10 bedroom per acre capacities. And the balance of the plan area is then made up with forest recreation and conservation preserve, and that totals about 20 acres. This is the proposed plan for the specific plan zoning designations. The two designations of village commercial core and village commercial neighborhood are most similar to the village commercial zoning that the county already has. It has similar densities and allowances. And then the main differences, I guess, under the existing plan, the existing Squaw Valley General Plan versus the proposed plan, is that the existing surface parking lots out here on the south side of Squaw Creek would be specifically designated for development of day skier parking, including that structured parking facility I noted. There would be some additional creation of village forest recreation and conservation preserve zoning, both over in the far western portion of the plan area and along the Squaw Creek corridor. In total, there's about an additional 14 acres of forest recreation and conservation preserve zoning created through the project if it were approved. That said, moving on to the main course. This is just a brief rundown of the impacts analyzed in the CIR, and the short description of this is that we analyzed everything. The only item that was not analyzed in the EIR is agricultural resources, because there are none within the plan area. And so that was scoped out. But otherwise, the environmental analysis made a complete analysis of every potential impact area for all other resource areas. What I'm going to do is first go through the major findings of the EIR, kind of focusing on the 5 resource areas that had significant findings of significant and unavoidable impacts, even with application of feasible mitigation measures. In there, I probably will include mention here or there of some other related impacts that were mitigated to a less than significant level. I'll be sure to point that out. And then we'll just go through the balance of the resource areas in very brief and kind of give you a taste of the impact findings and conclusions and the mitigations that the county is proposing. So the first area of significant unavoidable impacts is related to cultural resources. As I think everyone knows, the project area is the site of the 1960 Winter Olympics, which was the first in the United States in 28 years. It was also the first live broadcast Olympics, and the consequences of that is that it helped foment the rise of, to a large degree, of North American, particularly West North American ski culture. There were several buildings that were constructed in preparation for the Olympics. Several of those survive today. There's a total of 5 within the plan area, all of which would be removed. 3 of them, due to modifications to their architecture, relocation, and other issues, do not maintain their historic integrity, and therefore they're not eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places or the California Register. Those are the Media Center building, the reception building, and the clock tower building. However, there were 2 buildings that did retain historic significance in all 4 areas of historic association, period architecture, association with important events and people. That was the Nevada Spectator Center, which is located in the main parking area out near Far East Road as you first enter the resort, and then also the Olympic Valley Lodge, which was the Athlete Center, and that's in the far northwestern portion of the plan area. The mitigations for removal of these resources is to basically architecturally catalog the buildings. You would have an architectural historian prepare a written report, also prepare plans, do video cataloging, photographic cataloging, and selecting which important architectural features and other resources can be salvaged out of those buildings and later used for interpretive displays. Nonetheless, because this resource would no longer exist, the finding is it would be a significant and unavoidable impact because this is a scarce resource and there would be less of it. Notably, the area in general of Olympic Valley is also somewhat sensitive for cultural resources related to the Washishu or Washoe people. They had summertime habitations and hunting grounds in the area. We were able to find less than significant impacts for that resource area through application of mitigations, including things like conduction of pre-construction surveys, having on-site Native American monitors and archaeological resource monitors during project grading, ground disturbing activities, and also requiring stoppage of work in the event of an accidental discovery. On the subject of visual resources, we also had a number of significant and unavoidable impact findings. Those impacts were generally, could be characterized as being applicable to the permanent residents of the valley and or the long-term seasonal residents who may go back and forth between a couple of homes and spend a lot of time in the valley. The major findings were that because of this alpine resort community setting, which includes numerous scenic attributes and in general terms can be described overall as a scenic environment with the backdrop of the mountain slopes and the peaks. Also Squaw Meadow and Squaw Creek and the golf course figure prominently in those visual resource attributes. The alteration of the setting has a high potential to result in impacts which are generally experienced as an individual viewer's reaction to the changed visual environment. And so some of the major findings were that due to the length of time that the project would build out, theoretically over 25 years, the ongoing construction activities, including partially constructed buildings that would nonetheless be screened during construction, material stockpiles, heavy construction equipment, those elements would detract significantly from the scenic attributes at the west end of the valley, even with mitigation. So those permanent residents and those long-term seasonal residents would be affected by these changes that the project would bring. Also of note, Squaw Valley Road is a scenic roadway in the Placer County General Plan. We had a finding that the project would have an effect on the scenic roadway through the period of construction. Notably, because some of the views of the lower slopes of the mountain as a consequence of the project would be obstructed, and the project would result in the continuation of a long-term development trend in a highly scenic area, the impact would be significant for those residents, as I mentioned, though it would be less than significant for visitors who would only experience it on a temporary basis and would not have the same type of reaction to the changed environment. Some of the mitigations that we have for visual resources include requirement for compliance with the design guidelines, which would ensure a unified architectural theme is implemented throughout the plan area. Compliance with the master lighting plan, which would ensure minimum nighttime lighting levels. Installation of temporary screening during project construction, as I mentioned, and also installation of landscape screening for project operations. We'll move on to transportation and circulation. I will draw your attention briefly to this diagram. This just shows the roadway study area within Olympic Valley. I will point out, however, that the study area also included the Highway 89 corridor from Truckee to the project area, then down to Tahoe City, and included some small segments of State Route 28, where State Route 28 and Highway 89 intersect. Because the study area is a resort setting, its traffic patterns are described somewhat differently than typical traffic that you would experience in other urban areas where you typically have Monday through Friday AM and PM peak conditions that are based on travel conditions as people go to and come back from work and do other errands. Because this is a resort area, the area experiences seasonal peaks. It also includes peak days and then, of course, peak hours on those peak days. And so That's what this EIR analysis has analyzed, is those representative peak usage periods of the peak season, peak day, peak hour. They are based on guest arrival and departure patterns as the representative study condition. We had a winter analysis, which was based on a representative Saturday morning peak and also a Sunday afternoon peak. And that would be when the most resort guests and day skiers would be arriving and departing from the resort area. There was also a summer analysis, and that analysis was based on a Friday afternoon peak because the summer condition has a little bit different usage patterns. A Friday afternoon in August, which is the busiest representative summer condition. Roadway intersections that were studied within the Olympic Valley area, and looks like it's working, but it's a little weak. Included, make sure I get this right, we've got Squaw Valley Road at Village East Road, which is right here. We've got Squaw Valley Road at Far East Road and Christie Hill Road, which is right here. Squaw Valley Road at Wayne Road, and also Squaw Valley Road at Squaw Creek Road. Those roadway segments throughout the Olympic Valley area and within the plan area were analyzed, as well as the intersections. And the finding was that the segments and intersections would degrade with the addition of project-generated traffic. However, through the implementation of a fairly robust traffic management plan that would trip under certain peak conditions where peak usages are predicted to exceed a certain average daily vehicle load, traffic management would be implemented. It would include things that are already in effect, but in a more robust fashion of 3-laning, having traffic personnel at specified intersections to help manage the flow of traffic, and some other things like that. The finding is that with the implementation of traffic management, all of the intersections and roadway segments within Olympic Valley would operate at acceptable levels, with the exception of one intersection, which is Squaw Valley Road and Village East Road right here in the plan area. A little hard to see here. I'll point it out. And so that was the lone significant and unavoidable impact finding for that portion of the traffic study. We also found that project operation would result in potentially adverse impacts to Caltrans facilities. Some of the intersection segments that were studied that are of note are the State Route 89 Alpine Meadows Road intersection. Currently that's operating at unacceptable levels and would continue that condition under the project. However, the county and Caltrans have been working together to have a signal improvement and bridge widening project at that location. That project has been approved. It's been contracted, and thank you. My understanding is that it would go to construction, hopefully this construction season. And so once that is constructed, that significant and unavoidable impact would not exist. But in the near term, while we're working through the CIR process, the finding is that it would be significant and unavoidable. We also have impacts at State Route 89 and Squaw Valley Road related to a left turn lane. And the mitigation would be to work with Caltrans to adjust the signal timing and lengthen the turn pocket. However, the county cannot compel Caltrans, which is an outside agency, to do anything. And so again, the finding is that if this was infeasible and couldn't be implemented, it would result in a significant and unavoidable impact. We nonetheless would require the applicant to pursue those mitigations in the hopes that signal timing modification and lengthening of that turn pocket could be addressed. Lastly, the finding on State Route 89 between West River Street and Deerfield Avenue is that during the Friday PM peak hour, there would be an exacerbated condition of an already unacceptable level of service. Presently, Caltrans, while they do have a concept 4-laning plan that they have in their their document library. It's not an approved planning document, and there's no approved funding program that the project could contribute to help offset that impact. So again, that's a significant and unavoidable impact. Notably, and I think I already kind of touched on this as I went over these issues, it's important to note that what the results of the analysis characterize are conditions that are representative of peak hour conditions during peak season on a peak day, and these are not daily operational conditions. They would be discrete impacts. They would occur on a limited basis. They're predicted to occur approximately up to 20 times per year at full project build-out. And while the project would result in a substantial overall increase to daily traffic on roadways within the study area, traffic on a daily basis would operate at acceptable levels of normal operation. Moving on to noise, similarly, because construction and traffic drive both of these impact issues, the period over which the project would build out was a major factor in the findings of the EIR analysis. And in short, that was that the effects of ongoing construction noise over potentially a 25-year period where you may have, theoretically 12 to 15 years of construction, you could theoretically have all 25, most likely not, is that though that is exempted under the county ordinance as a temporary impact, under a CEQA analysis, we have a little bit different standard, and we have to determine is that nonetheless significant to people who would be affected by that. And that was the finding, is that because of the long-term nature of this and the number of persons who would be exposed as various parts of the plan build out in different areas or under different phases of construction, there would be significant unavoidable impacts related to construction noise. I should mention that those impacts, nonetheless, they do include, all of these impacts include mitigations. For example, with construction noise, mitigations require locating staging areas away from sensitive land uses to the maximum extent practical, requiring best available control technology for things like engine shrouds and exhaust mufflers on heavy off-road construction equipment. Use of noise curtains and sound walls, use of stockpiles to create noise barriers, things like that will be looked at on a project-by-project basis as the plan area is built out and implemented. So mitigations would reduce those impacts, unfortunately not to a less than significant level. Also of note, it's not a year-round condition. Because we are in the Tahoe Basin area, construction is limited to approximately 6 months out of the year between May 1st and late October. On the issue of traffic noise generated by the project, we also had a finding of significant and unavoidable. Presently, under the wintertime peak conditions, or average daily conditions, I should say, noise on Squaw Valley Road, different segments vary, but generally is around 60 decibels, just north of 60 decibels, which is the county threshold for maximum exposure for sensitive receptors, which would be residences along the roadway. The finding of the analysis was that during the wintertime, because the relative volume of traffic does not, it increases quite a bit, but not to a level where you would experience a significant increase in the amount of noise generated. There's about a 1 decibel, slightly less than 1 decibel increase to those residences along the Squaw Valley Road that would be located within about 170 feet of the roadway. There is no mitigation available because of the proximity of the residences to the roadway. You can't build noise walls. They're already there. You can't, if you move the road out into the meadow, that has a lot of deleterious impacts. And so that impact is there. The somewhat larger impact is during the summertime condition where the relative traffic volume increases substantially more, and we have about a 4.5 decibel increase in summertime traffic noise, and there is a portion of Squaw Valley Road where that 170-foot contour would have about residences along Squaw Valley Road would experience about a 64.5 decibel noise level at certain areas, and I believe, off the top of my head, that's at about 170 feet off the roadway. It could be less. I'd have to look at the analysis. But again, significant unavoidable impact. We did find that traffic noise impacts within the project area could be mitigated to a less than significant level with use of modern construction technology, which effectively reduces interior noise levels significantly. Notably, there were no interior noise impacts determined for those existing residences along Squaw Valley Road in the analysis. The last area of significant unavoidable impacts is in the area of greenhouse gas and climate change. The project was analyzed as if it would be completely built out by 2020 to determine if it would comply with the requirements of AB 32, which is commonly referred to as the California Global Warming Solutions Act, by achieving a 21.7% reduction in the generation of greenhouse gases. And that's based on the State of California Air Resources Board scoping plan requirements. And that's in comparison to the no action taken scenario. That no action taken scenario assumes that the project is built out under the existing conditions at the time that the NOP is released. So the main driver of that is building code. We have had some updates to the building code since the NOP has been released. And we will likely continue as energy efficiency requirements improve to see that over the lifetime of this project. The analysis determined that in comparison to the no action taken scenario, the project would be 25% more efficient. So it was able to achieve the necessary greenhouse gas reductions in the near term 2020 period to comply with the state's scoping plan. And as I said, that's largely a function of improved Title 24 requirements through building code that require better water heating, better appliances, more efficient appliances, and also has to do with the state's ongoing implementation of the renewable energy portfolio and at a federal level, advanced clean cars and low carbon fuels. Unfortunately, because we can't predict what will happen beyond 2020, we're not able to determine what the regulatory environment will be, just that it's likely that we will continue to increase the restrictiveness of greenhouse gas generation requirements for projects, probably something along the level of compliance with some target levels that the governor's office has set that are currently being looked at. So in the post-2020 condition, we're just not simply able to safely determine that it would be less than significant because we can't for certain say that the project would be able to comply. Nonetheless, applications for project entitlements would be required to analyze the project's ability to comply with regulations in effect at that time and to implement all feasible mitigation measures. So that said, real briefly, because I know I've used up a lot of your time, the summary of the remaining impacts are impact areas where resources impacts were determined to be less than significant, or they would be reduced to less than significant with mitigation measures proposed by the project. In this instance of land use and forest resources, all impacts were determined to be less than significant. In the instance of population, employment, and housing, there was one impact related to housing, specifically employee housing, and the county has a general plan requirement of which I know you all are aware for 50%, each project in the Tahoe area to provide 50% of its workforce housing through various mechanisms, whether it be building units or dedicating units or contributing in lieu fees. And so the mitigation is to prepare the Village at Squaw Valley Employee Workforce Housing Plan, and that would be the living document, as you will, as we go through the various phases of the project that would be continually updated as phases come along that specify how employee housing will be provided. In the area of biological resources, again, all of the impacts were determined to be either less than significant or more often less than significant with mitigation. The thrust of those mitigations include compliance with state and federal and local regulatory permitting requirements, conducting pre-construction surveys for sensitive plant and animal species, providing in-kind mitigation for impact areas, and in the instance of Squaw Creek, which has a lot of these things rolled up into it, also having a plan for adaptive management for Squaw Creek post-restoration to continue that to ensure that the restoration effort is effective and can be adjusted as needed. In the area of air quality impacts, again, all impacts less than significant with mitigation. The major mitigations to come out of that were to implement ongoing reactive organic gas and nitrogen oxide emissions review and reduction. As individual projects come forward and they're reviewed, they would submit information for the county to analyze on those discrete project proposals. Soils, geology, and seismicity, things that are pretty standard run-of-the-mill. Submit a fault evaluation report. There are 2 faults, potential faults that run through the project area that would be analyzed further before any buildings would be allowed to be built. Each individual building construction phase would be accompanied by a geotech report. And with regards to the mountain, we would have continued avalanche controls as done now, and compliance with county building codes for when you do have discrete impacts within avalanche areas. The county construction code requires that facilities be engineered to withstand any forces of impacts. By the way, by and large, the buildings are basically out of any impact avalanche zone. It's mainly relative to outdoor gathering areas that are associated with the project. There is one location over in the far western portion of the plan area where the proposed relocated mountain maintenance center would be partially within a low potential hazard area. With hydrology and water quality, again, fairly standard run-of-the-mill processes for the mitigations. Notably, the project would be taking out a lot of existing old historic paving and would be required to comply with the state's much more stringent updated requirements that requires much heavier water treatment requirements for new construction. We would have, importantly, with regard to management of the well field, there would be ongoing monitoring and verification of groundwater pumping, its effects on well field operation, its effects on flows within Squaw Creek, and again, as I already mentioned, adaptive management for Squaw Creek restoration. We're just about there. Public services and utilities, again, pumping management plan, water supply verification prior to construction of wells to serve the project. That would be a function of the Squaw Valley Public Services District, or the water supplier for the project, most likely to be the PSD, providing the county with will serve verification and water supply service requirements for the project. In the area of sewer, there would be some requirements for on-site peak storage to mitigate peak flows. Again, these would all be taken care of at the time that the project is built. And that would be in-line storage, predominantly may include a small holding tank. And lastly, there would be a development agreement with the Public Services District for not only fire services, water, sewer, all of the services that they provide. In the area of hazardous materials and hazards, we'd have hazardous materials contingency plans for demolition of those old buildings that may have lead and asbestos and other hazardous materials, and a construction management plan to address emergency response in the event of an accidental discovery of something unexpected. The only further thing to mention, I think, at this point is that there is a cumulative impact analysis for the project that analyzes the effects of the project when combined with other foreseeable and projected development. Each of the significant and unavoidable impacts that I already detailed were determined to be significant and unavoidable in the cumulative. There were no other new significant, unavoidable, or new impacts in that cumulative that required mitigation. So with that said, as I mentioned before, we're within the draft EIR public comment period. Some of the opportunities for ongoing public input would be at the Squaw Valley MAC, also at this forum, and lastly at the Board of Supervisors when we have those entitlement hearings at a future date to be determined. This is contact information. I hope I kept your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
mic's not on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if the applicant at this time has anything to add on the environmental document, you can get up and speak on it.
Thank you all and welcome. And thanks to county staff, Alex and Sarah and Richard and all the others that helped us with this environmental review. And thanks to Ascend Environmental. This is one of the most thorough and comprehensive documents we've ever worked on and one of the most professional teams. So we really look forward to it. This project, a few things about it, just that we'd just like to point out on the draft EIR document is that.
Just say, can you go ahead and give us your name?
My name is Chevis Hosey. I'm the Vice President of Development for Chevis Hosey, that's CHEVIS HOSEA, VP of Development for Squaw Valley Ski Holdings and Squaw Valley Real Estate. There is, so this project, as you'll see in the project, to bring some color to some of the items we'd like you to focus on, if you would, while you're in your review of these, is this 93-acre project has 12 acres of building footprints, sits in about a 3,000-acre setting in Olympic Valley. Of the 93 acres, 45 acres of that is open space. This is one of the, I'm not sure you could find another project in terms of environmentally sensitive projects where you could develop 1,500 bedrooms on 12 acres of building footprints and disturb, have a net disturbance of new disturbed land that's actually negative. We disturbed 6 new acres of new lands with this project, and we restore 15 acres with the restoration of Squaw Creek. So there's a net 9 negative acres of disturbed land post-project. This is truly, if you had to describe this project in a few words, it's the redevelopment of parking lots at Squaw Valley. There's only, as I mentioned, only 6 acres that are not in parking lots that are part of this project. If we were doing this development as a single-family resident, just a typical community on 10,000, units on 10,000-acre lots, it would be well over 200 to 300 acres of disturbed land in those environments. There's, in terms of this, the impacts that Alex was alluding to there's been a lot of focus in the community once this document came out on the number of significant unavoidable impacts. We'd like you to also, I think that focus is errant, and would like you to focus on also the specificity of the documents in each of the areas and see why some of these are significant and avoidable, because sometimes it's one particular event on a particular peak day that might be causing that. There are also, because this is the redevelopment of disturbed lands on parking lots, there's a lot of less than insignificant measures, as you meant, more than significant, including biology, endangered species, fish, water, because it's developing disturbed land. The construction impacts are driving a lot of some of the significant unavoidable impacts related to traffic and noise and those things. And you hear a lot, and you'll see a lot in the press about the 25-year construction period that we want to put our community through. In the last 25 years in Olympic Valley, about 1,000 bedrooms have been developed. This, as you all know, real estate cycles and business cycles, they cycle. And so there's, through this 25-year period, you'd expect to see 2 to 3 recessions when nothing gets developed. To give you an example of that, let's look at the history. For the last 25 years, about 1,000 bedrooms have been developed. Almost 700 of those bedrooms were developed in 3 years. The rest of it was 15, 20, some 0. There's been less than 150 units developed in Olympic Valley in the last 12 years. So construction is lumpy, and so it's not 25 years of construction. It's most likely 10 to 12 to maybe as much as 15 years of construction in spurts, as the market cycles. And there's and also this particular construction period here, there's really a 6-month construction period. So in the time when most of the guests and our second homeowners and our primary homeowners and our guests are enjoying the resort during the wintertime, there's very little construction. And what construction there is inside of buildings. There's a grading moratorium, as you know, here from October 15th through the end of April. So there's no heavy construction during those periods of time. Views, one of the areas that's been a lot of sensitivity here. If you look back at that plan view of the project area, you'll notice that there's 2 key neighborhoods. There's one on the east and there's one on the west. That's by design. When the project was redesigned and was reduced from 3,000 bedrooms to the currently 1,500 bedrooms that it is today, was last revision, that was to preserve that awesome view that you get when you arrive at Squaw Valley. So there's development over to the west and development to the east to avoid interrupting those views. And we've got visual simulations that'll be out in a couple of weeks that will prove that in fact, has been achieved. You talk about building heights and preserving views. You hear a lot of talk about our 108-foot buildings. We also have a lot of those are 6- and 7-story buildings. We also have a lot of 2-story buildings. If you look at the project as an entirety, on average, our average stories are 3.3 stories, and our average height is 60 feet. Water, we need 240 acre feet to serve this project of the 60,000 acre feet that falls on the Olympic Valley watershed in a normal precipitation year. We also need those normal precipitation years, if you could help us with that as well. So there's less, and also with this expanded well field, now that you have a cooperative owner at Squaw Valley Resort, you have a cooperative with the PSD, you'll have a larger well field where each well is pumping less and frequency, so less impact on any one particular pumping areas. And cultural, we eliminated the most valuable building in this project to preserve the members' locker room for our patrons. The thing I could argue for in closing, the most sensitive thing that we've done in terms of environmental sensitivity to this project is reduced it by 50% over the last 3 years. There's over 23 acres that are down zoned for that development. We boarded development on the 2 most valuable buildings in the project to preserve views. The community, since I've been to Olympic Valley, has been asking for a general plan amendment to reduce the amount of development opportunity for the community. This project approval does that. When this project is approved, 2,300 bedrooms go away. So with that, thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and open it up to the public now. And please excuse me if I don't get your names right and stuff, but would Mike Bruner come up? And then after Mike, it'll be Bob Barnett? Barnett. Okay.
Good morning, I'm Mike Bruner, and I'm representing myself and my wife this morning. We are homeowners over in Alpine Meadows, the adjacent valley, and we've submitted a written response already to the EIR. I'm not going to obviously read that back to you guys. So based on all these findings in the draft EIR, we believe the development poses significant and unavoidable environmental impacts. We heard about what all those were. I'm not going to repeat those again for you. I don't have any new ones that weren't in the EIR. But, including the visual resource destruction and the light pollution is a big concern for us over in Alpine Meadows, because destruction of the night sky, you just can't get it back. In accordance with PRC section 21002 and the CCR section 15093, my wife and I believe this requires a statement of overriding considerations, which we don't believe evidence exists for. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm going to give you a quick overview. My name is Bob Barnett. I'm an attorney. I live full-time in Squaw Valley, and I'm a member of Friends of Squaw Valley. The 500 members of Friends of Squaw Valley are primarily homeowners and property owners there, and their concern is with the long-term view of environmental sustainability. What we've learned from studying the DEIR is that there are significant and unavoidable impacts, and we were kind of stunned at how many there are. I'm not going to try to go through each of them. Other speakers will do that. But that's what got our attention, as I'm sure you can understand. What I want to help you review is Squaw Valley is a small, fragile environment. And there have been comparisons made to other ski resorts, but I don't think that they apply remember, Squaw Valley is itself a meadow, and even though it's been paved over, and even though the creek that runs through it has been made a ditch next to that parking lot, which was done back in 1960, when people weren't thinking about environmental concerns, it's still a meadow. And basically, the core area that's going to be developed and built on is a meadow. And it has, the steep scenic walls around it. It's a very unique area both in the Sierras and in the west as far as ski area is concerned. So when you look at putting development at the foot of the valley, it's very different from a place like Vail where it's big enough that they have a freeway running through it. There's East Vail, West Vail, there's Mid Vail, there's Lion's Head. So Squaw Valley doesn't compare. If you look at the Aspen Valley, it's large enough to have a jet airport in there a couple miles from the ski resort. Or if you look at Jackson Hole, that valley is big enough that the city of Jackson Hole is 15 miles away from the ski resort, and it's in the same valley. Now, that's just not true in Squaw Valley. It's a very small, fragile environment with a meadow that has one way in and one way out, and that opens onto another very small Truckee River Valley, which is one road in each direction area. So we're dealing with development in a very fragile, small environment, and I think that's really important to consider when you look at the amount of development, because size of development is what we have focused on. The number of bedrooms, the heights of the building, and how close they are to each other. Those are things that concern us. One of the things I want to point out about size and planning is this. The only mistake that can be made is to allow too many bedroom or too much development, because that can never be fixed. If you go smaller, that can always be remedied later on. But once it's too big, the environmental impacts never stop. And as they're pointed out here, they're cumulative. Now, one of the things we draw the Planning Commission's attention to is the Placer County General Plan policies, which we think guide the decision-making in this development. Policy 1.G.1 says, the county will support expansion of existing ski areas, and then it's a two-part test.
Oh, okay, your time is up. If you don't need to go into comparisons with other ones, it's just to this plan. I mean, if you're saying it's a meadow, it should stay a meadow, I think that's what we need to hear.
Okay, well, I just wanted to call your attention to the planning policy that says transportation system and capacity has to be considered, as well as environmental impacts that can be adequately mitigated. Our view is that they can't. So here's what we want you to consider. Number one, we'd like half the bedrooms as a viable alternative, because that's in the DEIR as one of the ways to mitigate the unavoidable impacts. Second thing we'd like you to consider is reduced heights of the buildings to protect the scenic visual environment. And third, we'd like you to have the stream restored from the ditch to a more viable stream as a condition of development. Those are our concerns. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of the speaker?
Yes, sir.
But that's fine, but I think you were also talking about the development rather than the EIR. Just one quick question. Do you think that the EIR as presented covers all the bases, the EIR? Or is there stuff missing in the EIR? I think that's what we want to hear today.
Okay.
The staff has given us not only the EIR, but the summary of them, like Alex was given. He's given us all in writing. Is there stuff in there that you don't agree with or disagree with, or that wasn't analyzed properly? That's what we're
Yes.
here to debate about, not
And
about
there will
the...
be other speakers that will address that. I'm just here to kind of give you the overview.
Okay, I think the future speakers need to say they either agree with it or not, or what was not inadequate about this document. Because we will have the opportunity, as mentioned, a couple more times to talk about the project and what things should go forward on the project.
Well, number of bedrooms do affect the environment, and when you look at the mitigation, reducing the number of bedrooms mitigates some of the unavoidable impacts.
Okay, I think we got your point.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Peter Schweitzer. And if Rob Jeffrey would be ready to go.
Hi, Peter Schweitzer, Olympic Valley. I want to talk about Shirley Canyon, especially Lot 19, but also Lots 16, 17, and 18. This is being proposed to be heavy maintenance and propane storage. Nearly 200,000 gallons of propane is proposed to be stored there, along with heavy maintenance and toxic materials, chemicals, waste will be stored in this area as well. It's currently zoned forest recreation and conservation preserve, at least for a part of the area. Alex also mentioned it's in an earthquake zone or seismic area, and I believe it's also part of it's in an avalanche zone. So the other aspect of this area and these lots is that this is a prime area for the aquifer recharge. So this is a major source of water for the valley. So along with the dangers of having the materials and waste there, we haven't addressed the aquifer issue. We're not addressing where a fire station would be adjacent to this dangerous chemicals and propane in a forest recreation. So we suggest no rezoning of this area, and they should put the propane and heavy maintenance as far away from Shirley Canyon and the aquifer recharge area as possible. This is not really adequately addressed in the EIR. Also, the fact that you'll have almost daily 30,000 gallons of propane being delivered to this area is not addressed, as well as the traffic of maintenance to and from that area. So I'd like to, again, no rezoning of this area. The other thing that's not adequately discussed is economic impacts of the valley during the 25-year construction period. They talk about a rising tide lifts all boats, but a tsunami trashes everything. And 25 years of construction in this valley is a tsunami. Noise, dirt, traffic, it'll be like a war zone. TOT is highest during the prime construction period. Placer County relies on that TOT to fund all types of different activities. That TOT is at risk. So who's going to play golf in the dust and dirt blowing across the meadow? Who's going to want to have a wedding there? Who's going to go there for lunch in the construction zone period? All the businesses will be at risk. Tuesday Blues Day will have to be a heavy metal format. So who's going to want to buy a home there? There's currently 32 homes for sale in the valley, single-family homes. 11 were sold last year. 4 have been sold so far this year. There's a 3-year inventory of homes for sale. So, are more rooms needed? And there's plenty of empty hotel rooms most of the year anyway. So I think that you need to study the economic impacts that are going to occur during this 25 years and the negative impacts to the valley and to Placer County. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Rob?
The Gaffney?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I heard you say Jeffrey there, but yeah,
Yeah.
my writing's not very neat. Thanks a lot for allowing us to provide these comments. I just wanted to comment briefly on the visual resources. The draft EIR in section 8.1.1 addresses visual resources impacts for what they call viewer groups, which according to the report includes residents of existing housing in the valley, visitors using lodging facilities, motorists and bicyclists on roadways within the valley, golf course users, hikers accessing the trails in the valley, and cross-country skiers and downhill skiers. I'd like to argue that the definition of viewer groups needs to be expanded to those living in adjacent lands or those using adjacent lands such as Alpine Meadows, Granite Chief Wilderness, and others around the North Tahoe region that could be impacted by the night glow. I've witnessed the visual impacts of the current village night glow during many camping trips in the Granite Chief Wilderness, the Sierra Crest Trail between Squaw Valley and Sugar Bowl, between Tahoe City and Truckee, and even as far east as the East Shore beaches on the east shore of Lake Tahoe, especially during the winter. As the report states, the effects are accentuated under certain conditions, including cloud cover, dust, and different atmospheric conditions that can arise. Night glow degrades the mountain experience, not just for the people in the valley, but for the people living in the adjacent areas and those using adjacent areas such as wilderness lands. Granite Chief Wilderness is right over the ridge there from Squaw Valley. In addition to requesting that the final EIR expand the definition of what they call viewer groups, I'd like to request that it addresses light pollution mitigation measures more concretely with respect to the varying environmental factors that do amplify night glow, including those mentioned in the report, but also snow cover in the winter. I'm not sure if that was in there, because snow cover creates a lot of reflection. And in the wintertime, any sort of night reflection down bounces back up, and especially if there's cloud cover, you can see it from just about everywhere. Simply adding light caps, wouldn't be sufficient enough. So that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, Chase Schweitzer.
So I'm going to be focusing on two issues in the draft DIR. The first being on noise from construction. In regard to noise from both daytime and nighttime construction, even after the mandatory implementation of suggested noise mitigation, the draft simply states on the 21st page of the section covering noise that the impact would remain significant and unavoidable. Please let me remind everyone in this room that that will be 25 years of significant and unavoidable impact from noise. I would be about to be going into my mid-50s when the noise would theoretically stop from the construction. And I say theoretically because there's still no guarantee that this project will actually be finished in 25 years, nor the time periods of each phase have they actually been determined. A reduced density alternative would mitigate the noise better than any of the suggested mitigations in the draft EIR. This one issue within noise, though, does not cover operations, which are also stated as being significant. Although noise from operations is important, even more important when covering operations is the larger carbon footprint we will be dealing with by full build-out. Greenhouse gases are forecasted to increase to 45,403 tons of CO2 a year at full build-out. The majority caused by vehicle trips, electricity, and propane. This is an almost four-fold increase from current levels. I'm not sure about you, but it seems like a better business model for any ski resort would be figuring out a way to mitigate CO2, especially if they are wanting normal precipitation years, as was stated today. So thank you.
Thank you. Judy Carney.
I would like to talk to you today about population and views. The Squaw Valley General Plan indicate that there is a limit to the optimum development in the Squaw Valley area and allows for growth to reach a seasonal peak overnight residential population of about 11 to 12,000 people. The plan states that the quantity of housing units must be balanced between the year-round resort demands, including employees, and the permanent population, and the number of housing units must not exceed the ability of the environment and the public facility infrastructure to accommodate the peak population. Placer County in the DEIR has estimated the current peak overnight population at 5,858 people. They applied the occupancy rate assumptions developed in the water study assessment, which used occupancy rate percentages to develop an assumption of the average yearly population, not the peak seasonal overnight population. The WSA admitted that the actual overnight peak occupancy is unknown. So with that in mind, I decided to calculate the current seasonal peak overnight residential population. My calculations indicate that the current peak overnight population is about 12,000 people. And with the projects that are either approved or in the process, that number could raise to 17,000 people. Overpopulation in this valley of 2.06 square miles will create not only intolerable impacts, but actual damage to the delicate environment. I ask you to help us and ask KSL to rethink the size of their project and come back to the county with a smaller and less impacting proposal. The subject's DEIR has determined that landscaping would satisfactorily screen the proposed 108-foot structures. And while impact would be significant to permanent residents, the view impact would be less than significant to occasional visitors. Therefore, the proposed project would not substantially detract from or degrade scenic vistas. I find that offensive on two levels. First, the residents are taxpayers in Placer County, so one would think their quality of life is more important than an occasional visitor. And second, if an impact is significant, it is significant to all who come to the valley, whether visitor or resident. Looking at tall buildings and skylines in New York City is beautiful. Looking at tall buildings in a beautiful alpine valley like Squaw Valley, no matter how the architecture, is not beautiful. Placer County is blessed with many beautiful scenic vistas. If we were to list the top 5, it would include the view from the east end of the valley looking west, especially on the morning after a new fallen snow. You can help. You can require that views be protected and that the proposed heights of the buildings be reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Fisher?
I'll pass.
Pass, okay. Mary Bennett? Bennett.
Good morning. Mary Bennett. I'm a 35-year resident. Terrible speaker. I've worked in the ski industry for 25 plus years. I just want to say that greenhouse gas, air quality, and traffic analysis has not been completed for the Alpine Meadow region. I feel that we get backed up on any given day with the traffic coming out of Squaw. It has not been addressed. Air quality has not been addressed. I will be writing a formal letter and sending it to Placer County. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John Beer?
My name is John, the most popular name in the Bible, and Beer, the most popular name on the billboards in Texas.
You notice I got it right, too.
First of all, I want to compliment Alex on his presentation. It was well done. I'm going to bring up 3 points. My father and I built the 7th cabin in Squaw Valley in 1949. I remember skiing Squaw Valley when they had one chairlift. I remember skiing in the winter of 50-51 when you would look down on the chairlift because they had to dig a trench for it because there was so much snow. I remember the floods, I think it was 1988, when so much water came down because of the rain in the wintertime in Squaw Valley and the existing concrete that was already there that flooded the valley. We were flooded in Squaw Valley for 3 days. We couldn't get out because of the water. I don't think that's been considered in the environmental impact. Noise, I've been at Squaw Valley a long time, and I've seen that village built and the trucks coming and going day and night, and that beep, 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 every time one of those suckers backed up, keeping you awake. The water situation. I'm a member of the Squaw Valley Mutual Water Company. That's not the public service company. It's a private water company. I hear the people saying, you will drill more wells for water. We already have a water shortage sometimes at Squaw Valley and a problem with the quality of the water. I'm very concerned about the water situation with the mutual water company and the public service water company, and I think the county needs to consider that. The trucks coming and going during the development of Inouesta's village beat up the road into Squaw Valley. With this new project, that road is going to take substantial damage. And I don't think that's been considered in the environmental impact. I think the fact that you have a winter rainstorm with snow on the ground and a potential floods like we had one year with lots of damage to lots of houses, I don't think that's been considered either. Those are my comments. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. David Stepper? Stepper?
Forget it.
Stepman.
I've got one of these for you.
Thank you.
I also applaud Alex on his presentation. Very good. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak. My name is David Stepner. I'm a permanent resident and 30-year skier of Squaw Valley. I'm also the chairman of the Squaw Valley Design Review Committee, but I will not be speaking today on behalf of the DRC, but rather as a member of the Friends of Squaw Valley. And I'll be speaking about two subjects, one very briefly, traffic and parking. Neither one of these subjects will be coming before the Design Review Committee. First, with regard to parking, refer to the chart that I just gave you. The current situation is that there are 3,100 parking spaces specified in the Squaw Valley General Plan. By the way, that general plan was done in 1983, and with that, since that will not be changing, that number, 3,100, which has got the Holy Grail associated with it, will have been targeted for 57 years by the time this 25 years is up, construction period. And I think situations have changed and will have changed in those 57 years. In any case, there's 3,100 parking spaces specified in the general plan, 560 more that are specified by the fifth busiest day. Today, there are 5,000 parking spaces, a number that's been confirmed by Chevis and by David Griffith, both in presentations in 2013 and 14, leaving about 760 extra spaces for day skier parking. Those go away at build-out. So I believe the day skier is actually being disenfranchised by this development, and those day skiers are the financial backbone of Squaw Valley. But now let me refer to traffic. Go to the second page of the handout I just gave you. The traffic study was done during the winter of 2011-2012, one of the driest in recent years, although we've had several since then. The day chosen for the peak hour was Saturday, February 18th, 2012, which is the red cross on that calendar in the lower right-hand corner. On February 7th, 2012, the San Francisco Chronicle ran a picture of Donner Summit showing absolutely no snow. It further reported that instead of a 69-inch snowpack, there was 12-inch snowpack that had fallen about 5 days earlier. And before that, there had been exactly one big storm. Christmas had been an absolute bust. So with February 18th being the first day of President's Weekend, whoever was still in ski mode came to ski, but not in the numbers one would expect to see in a good snow year, as many day skiers had simply given up. With this data, the draft DIR describes the significant unavoidable impacts to 89, 28, and the on-ramps to I-80, as well as the intersection of Squaw Valley Road. The situation is so bad that at this last intersection, the proposed solution is to lower the acceptable level of service from C to F. This is not a solution. This is admitting defeat. Referring to unacceptable traffic delays, it has also been stated that similar to parking, this will occur, quote, this will occur very infrequently during peak ski days. The vast majority of the year, traffic will continue to operate efficiently. But remember all the holidays and long weekends, Thanksgiving, MLK, President's Weekend, Christmas week, spring break weeks, as well as all the powder days, is 26 to 37 days of unacceptable traffic infrequent? I don't think so. And what is the mitigation measure proposed for Squaw Valley Road when this extra load does occur? To more often convert from 2 lanes to 3 lanes using traffic cones, a situation that many say is already dangerous, especially in bad weather, has been poorly staffed over the past 4 to 5 years, in spite of commitments, and is basically a horrible accident waiting to happen. What is the solution? As Chapter 17 of the draft DIR says in analyzing the reduced density alternative, quote, the 50% reduction was based on a rough conceptual estimate of the minimum amount of development reduction required to reduce traffic volumes sufficiently to have no significant traffic impacts, unquote. I could not have said it better myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ed? Since there was only one Ed, and I can't let you say it last time, I'm not even going to try.
I'm going to go slightly over 3 minutes. I'll warn you in advance. I'm Ed Hinneveld. I'm actually a member of the Squaw Valley MAC for about 20 years on and off. I'm chairman of the Friends of Squaw Creek, a grassroots group that has for over 10 years been trying to improve stream conditions in the valley. But I'm not speaking on behalf of either of those. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and some of the Friends of Squaw Valley colleagues that are expressing concern today. So I'm going to cover the topic of water and concerns there. So adequate water supply and consequences of well pumping have been seriously debated in Squaw Valley for my entire 37 years of living there. Millions have been spent trying to understand the hydrograph. The latest water assessment, the WSA, implies there's sufficient water in the system to meet the proposed project needs. Remember, this is only an assessment at this point. It's not a verification. And it addresses only sufficiency of operational supply, not the actual stream flow conditions or the biological consequences of that pumping. In 2007, the State Water Board concluded that Squaw Creek suffers from 1, excessive sediment, and 2, inadequate stream flows. Now this project proposes another 234 acre-feet, 28% more water extracted. This can't be good for the creek or the fish. The Gonda study, which is in the DEIR, reports pumping required for this new project will cause up to a 3-foot drawdown below the stream bed in the eastern portion of the project area and would cause harm to fish refugia pools as well as riparian vegetation. The report goes on to express concern about the adequacy of the groundwater model everybody's relying on, with citing severe limitations and uncertainty. Nevertheless, that groundwater model predicts a worsening of both water quantity and water quality from the already poor baseline condition. What's their solution, their mitigation? How do they get to less than significant? Drill additional wells. Drill, baby, drill. And they rely on an operational plan to pump the wells farther from the creek. But this is simply more straws in the same bathtub. It may not be safe or sustainable. The key mitigation in this whole thing on water is 13.4. It's the heart of all water mitigation rationalizations in this DER. It contends that well operation parameters, if followed, would result in, quote, confirmation that groundwater pumping does not result in loss of riparian vegetation. Such confidence is unwarranted and represents flawed assumptions in this DER. The weasel word here is substantial. The DER keeps going back to this word. We are to trust that pumping new wells by an operational system from a finite aquifer will not cause substantial adverse effects on water quality, Squaw Creek, or the biological habitat. What does substantial mean when it's already impaired? I do applaud the mitigation plans that call for creating detention storage areas, more wetlands and ponds, and somehow magically and hopefully improve groundwater elevations. But I found one mitigation to be quite curious. If riparian plants are lost to additional groundwater extraction, the solution is to pump more groundwater to irrigate them so they can survive. Does this make sense? Shouldn't the cause be addressed? That is, stop the drawdown. I'm almost done. Monitoring programs are proposed to document all the impacts. Some county processes, not the PSD, must robustly oversee them. This has to be developed. It's not identified yet. The Public Service District General Manager said, we're not the monitoring police and they're not in the business of flora and fauna management. This has to fall back on county. A secure ongoing funding mechanism needs to be determined beyond the 5 years proposed and go out even beyond the 25-year build out. Squaw Valley Real Estate must identify and memorialize that funding mechanism. Most important, my idea, my suggestion, and I want you to remember this because it's not addressed. They talk about maybe mitigation, maybe future monitoring, but it isn't monitoring that's enough. We need to create a water management action plan. This was done in 1991 after snowmaking and golf course irrigation threatened our aquifer. A plan which unfortunately expired in 3 years identified triggers and metrics as well as responses to and consequences of water deficiencies. It isn't enough just to monitor the problem. There must be a predetermined and agreed upon plan to reduce or stop the groundwater extractions causing the problem when they occur. Lastly, I do want to comment that Balance Hydrologic and their plan for proposed creek restoration is really the only beneficial impact identified in this entire DEIR. However, I believe the county should require as a condition of their approval that the creek restoration be started on the approval of the first small lot recordation and not wait until called for the 40% build out, which might never come or be 10 years from now. We need this action now. Thanks for the opportunity to comment.
Okay, thank you. Sean Stewart.
My name's Sean Stewart. I'm a property owner at Bridge 7 along Highway 89. We've already heard of the substantial and unavoidable impacts that the traffic will have and the intersections that have been studied in the presentation. But I feel that the DEIR was inadequate for ingress and egress for residents along Highway 89. and I'd like to see that studied as well as potential mitigation impacts in the reply comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Isaac Silverman?
Thank you. My name is Isaac, obviously, and I'm the staff attorney for Sierra Watch. We're a land use organization that's been tracking this quite closely. I think Alex did an excellent job outlining a lot of the significant unavoidable impacts identified in this EIR. I won't rehash all of them, and I think other people have brought up some of the areas like night glow that are quite important. The bottom line that we see from this EIR, and I'll keep this part brief, is that it shows that this development on this scale, on this scope of this size, is just incompatible with a small, fragile alpine valley like Squaw Valley, and frankly with the whole region of North Lake Tahoe, as we see night glow and traffic spill out beyond the valley's confines. Directly on the EIR, we have retained a team of experts and will be submitting comprehensive written comments going through each section. I'm not going to go through all of those in a duplicative way right now. I will raise a few key issues that I think both the Planning Commission and members of the public in attendance should be aware of in regards to the EIR. And those refer to both the traffic analyses and the water supply assessment and environmental impact reports generated by those. Unfortunately, both significantly underestimate both the amount of traffic, a number of trips that will be generated by this project, and also fail to look at key time periods and roadways, such as Interstate 80, for example, or the Friday night before a powder weekend or a holiday weekend, where significant impacts are likely to occur. If anybody's attempted to get to Squaw Valley from somewhere other than right here in Tahoe and driven on 80 on a Friday before a powder weekend, or attempted to get between Tahoe City and Truckee during those time periods on a Friday afternoon or evening, I think they know what I'm talking about. It's pretty hard to get anywhere, and that wasn't addressed in the EIR. As far as the water supply assessment and the environmental impacts that flow from that, unfortunately, the precipitation data used to underlie this model is both incomplete. It stopped in 2011, which is right at the beginning of our current drought, and in some areas grossly inaccurate, unfortunately. The 60,000 acre feet figure, for example, that Chevis quoted earlier is based on large overestimations by an order of magnitude of precipitation falling in the higher elevations. So unfortunately, these two errors in one section, traffic and water, they flow throughout the entire DEIR, because water supply obviously has a big impact on the biological impacts that Ed Henneveld and others from the Friends of Squaw Valley were predicting, and traffic clearly links to air quality and greenhouse gas emissions. So these are just some of the ways in which we've already identified that we find this DIR to be deficient and insufficient to meet CEQA's goals of providing the general public and the planning commissioners, decision makers, a thorough explanation of all the environmental impacts, all the proposed enough feasible mitigation measures, and finally consider a viable range of alternatives. As I said before, we'll be submitting exhaustive written comments going into these issues in more and much greater detail. Finally, the last thing I'd just bring up is that it is these impacts and these concerns that I think has filled this room today and why you're hearing from so many people. Simply put, Squaw Valley and North Lake Tahoe deserve better than the gridlock traffic, urbanization, noise, and environmental and cultural degradation promised by this proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. David Naughton?
Good morning. Thank you so much for all your hard work. I don't envy you guys in this position at all, men and women. My name is David Naughton. I'm a third-generation Squaw Valley resident. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and perhaps on behalf of the millennial generation, if they agree with me. Without a doubt, the most forbidding issue facing my generation is climate change. And although it is important to consider the construction's impacts on the environment, what I think is not addressed, and what I urge the county to address in making this important decision, is the environment's impact on the overall success of this grand project. In best estimates, if it is finished in 15 years, that would be 2030, we will no doubt be in an era of a new climate reality, and one in which we may not see snow in the wintertime. You look outside, our lake is receding. We're in our 4th year of drought. That's a big deal. And if we have such a large village with no snow, I have to say I'd rather see an empty parking lot than a vacant project and 500 furloughed employees. So I urge you to consider the bigger questions, and if I may leave you with one thing, change may be inevitable when progress is desired. Those concepts don't have to be synonymous with construction, expansion, and encroachment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jerry Risen?
Good morning, councilors and Alex and staff. My name is Jerry Reeson. I'm a 30-year homeowner in Squaw Valley. And just a bunch of things. First of all, shadowing. The DEIR says that there's no impact from shadowing as the sun is below the mountains in winter. Yet the DEIR simulation clearly shows the village in full sunlight on December 21st, which is the day that the sun is the lowest possible thing. Shadowing year-round must be studied in more detail. A cold, shadowed village is a significant degradation from the current setting and needs to be addressed. What days of the year is there shadowing? Summer matters, it's not just winter. It is the contention of Friends of Squaw Valley that the mass and scale of the proposed village at Squaw Valley, as analyzed in the DEIR, results in too many significant and unavoidable impacts that contradict Placer County's own general plan. These impacts would seriously degrade the quality of life for Squaw Valley residents, degrade the experience for visitors, and degrade the value of Placer County's jewels, one of Placer County jewels. Alex, unfortunately, didn't address alternatives this morning. I think alternatives is where your focus could well be spent time with further analysis. The drafters of the draft EIR seem to agree with this conclusion as stated in the alternatives section that a 50% density reduction was based on a rough estimate of the minimum amount of development reduction required to reduce traffic volumes sufficiently to have no significant traffic impacts. The section goes on to say the 50% reduction, the impacts on noise, visual, water, pollution, all would be reduced as well. This alternative needs to be expanded to include a reduced height analysis afforded by the density reduction and to evaluate its mitigating effect on the full range of impacts in detail at issue. Squaw Valley has never provided any justification for such a large project, says it's needed for competitive reasons, financial return, and is yet unsubstantiated. Regardless of the project sponsor's chosen objectives, it is completely in your discretion when an EIR uncovers significant unavoidable impacts to either deny the project, approve it with overriding considerations, or craft a compromise to reduce impacts. We, the Friends of Squaw Valley, therefore ask the Placer County Planning Commission to find this draft EIR insufficient in its analysis because of all the significant and unavoidable impacts, and request you require the applicant to submit a detailed project impact analysis of an alternative with 50% fewer bedrooms, building height reduction, relocated heavy maintenance, and smaller mountain adventure camp. Such an alternative may not address all the project objectives, but finding the balance between development and acceptable mitigation impacts should be the overriding consideration. Unavoidable impacts to Squaw Valley are unacceptable. Thank you for your time.
Paul Arnott? Is there a Paul out there? Yeah.
I want to thank you for your time, and very well addressed by David Stepner was the problem of transportation. I would like to just add one more thing to that. The worst case scenario, if any of you have ever tried to get in and out of Squaw Valley or up and down Highway 89 or over Donner Summit during a major storm, compound that with the increased development that is proposed, and you would find a dangerous situation. Many of us have done a lot of time or spent a lot of time in the backcountry skiing and have experienced avalanches, dangers caused by snow, but nothing could be worse than to have 10,000 people blocked in Squaw Valley by a storm big enough to stop everything from moving. If you allow this project to go on, and you have to be faced with the fact that big storms will happen, even though the environment currently has been very, very weak winters, that won't continue forever. We will have winters with big storms. And during those times, if you want to take the responsibility for people being trapped, possibly even injured or even worse, then go ahead and allow this project to take place. Right now, there are times when moving from Squaw Valley to moving to Truckee during a snowstorm takes 4 hours. How long will it take when you allow it to develop even further? Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Kathleen Cohn?
Hi, thank you for allowing me to talk. I would like to address the issue of noise pollution on a personal level. I noticed in the beginning you mentioned property owners within 300 feet of the development. Well, my home abuts the east parcel, and they want to put in a shipping and receiving facility within 75 feet of my home. Now, I'm an RN, and I don't know how I will ever be able to live and work and sleep in my home again. You shouldn't be allowed to put a shipping and receiving facility in the middle of a neighborhood. I've owned my home for 20 years, and I don't know what I'm going to do if this is allowed to be. A shipping and receiving facility belongs near where the products need to be delivered, not down the road. But I also just object to the fact that they would be allowed to ruin my livelihood and I don't know when I would ever sleep because of the beep, beep, beeping constantly, 75 feet within my home. So I respectfully request that that be not allowed to proceed. I also object to the, when you drive into Squaw Valley, on that east parcel, they want to put the parking lot for the employee parking. And, I guess I see that as visual pollution.
Okay, we're starting to get off the environmental document.
Okay, so my first thing is noise pollution. My second thing is if that shipping receiving facility be allowed to go through, what is the toxic, exposure to us? That is diesel fumes within 75 feet of my home. So I respectfully request that that not be allowed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone that has not signed up that wants to speak? Okay, just line up and give us your name, and then after you're done, there's a sign-up sheet to your right in that little alcove.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Edward Torres. I'm a 22-year full-time resident and homeowner on Squaw Valley Road. I've been fighting the county for almost 2 decades now to preserve the trees in front of my home being a scenic corridor. I'm very concerned about the impact of this construction on Squaw Valley Road, the damage it's going to do to the road, the noise levels that are going to be created for this perhaps for 25 years, 7 days a week, starting at 6 a.m. by large, heavy trucks. My bedroom window, like other people here, is only 40 feet from that roadway. And this plan takes no regard for homeowners of Squaw Valley Road for the noise, only immediately to the construction site itself. So my question is, what is the plan here to keep residents who live on Squaw Valley Road or otherwise directly impacted upon this? What are they going to do to help owners mitigate all this noises and damages to the road and so on and such? All the gentlemen have spoke here, is here, I'm in, I'll be in my mid-50s, by the time this is done. I'm in my mid-50s now. This is probably going to go till I'm dead, and I'm very lucky to be here. I'm very privileged to live in Squaw Valley. I feel very fortunate, but I worked hard to get here, and I really hate to see a lot of everything I work for just go into commercial profit. That's their main motive here, is to make profit, it seems like, and move on to the next project. So I would appreciate, one more thing here is the road traffic going there on the heavy days, especially with the third lane. No one has addressed this here. I've been doing this for 20 years now. Creates a tremendous amount of dust and gravel kicked up into the road, literally coating all the homes of Squaw Valley Road, all our vehicles, all our landscaping. I literally have to go blow dry it, hose it off all the time. And it's a lot of work already, and this is only going to make this matter a lot worse. That's all I need to say. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity. I'd like to raise a point.
State your
My name is Andrew Hayes, Hays. I'm a member of the Squaw community, resident of the Truckee River Corridor. We've heard a lot of things this morning about unavoidable impacts, significant impacts. And I think one thing that Mr. Fish touched on in the very beginning that needs to be reiterated is the loss of our cultural resources. This project proposes to destroy, tear down several very significant buildings, mainly being the Olympic Valley Lodge, also the Visitor Center, which is now known as the Far East Center. These buildings are not just historical in the sense of Squaw Valley, the community. They're not just historical in the sense of Placer County. In fact, it's actually probably not an overstatement to consider them valuable to this state and to this nation as a whole. These buildings were not just built for the Olympics. They are prime examples, as the EIR states, of mid-century modern architecture. This is something that has defined the state of California. It's a movement in architecture that bore out of Northern California and spread across this nation. It's an awkward age. They're not old enough. Washington didn't sleep there. But instead, athletes of the Olympics slept there. If we lose these structures now, they will never be retained. The EIR states that, mitigations being taking photographs, creating interpretive signs. I just question whether or not that is something that can truly replace what is irreplaceable. It is not just a part of Squaw Valley. This is a shared cultural heritage that all of us as residents of California and as residents of this nation hold. And just to close, I think when you're dealing with a proposed development of nearly 300,000 square feet, is it not possible to carve out a very small section for what these buildings are absolutely irreplaceable? Mr. Hossa would lead us to believe that this project will actually create a net gain of 9 acres of open space. I implore the board to take a look and wonder, is it possible within that 9 acres to come up with space to save 2 buildings? 2 buildings that will be our history today and forward. It's not, preservation isn't easy. It's about the courage to say when is enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Dan Heichel, Truckee, California. I have a question about the DEIR, specifically why there is no mention in Section 7, Cultural Resources, of Squaw Valley being designated a state historical designated site, number 724, Pioneer Ski Area, and the implications that has on energy conservation measures according to the CEQA Appendix F. I've requested this from the Planning Commission and the supervisors previously to be addressed, and it has not. And as a state designated historical site, the implications are such that a project such as this size does not conserve energy in any manner that is proposed at this point. And a project like this that would only see occupancy probably full-time at the most 2 to 3 months out of the year is not a wise and efficient use of energy as stipulated in Appendix F. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else? Seeing no one, I'll go ahead and close it off to public comment. And is there any comments from the commissioners? Larry?
No, I think it's interesting, the comments, and I think it's going to be challenging to put those all together and see how they fit into the EIS, EIR, and how they, if they in fact were answered or not answered, and come up with the solutions or the responses. And I think that'll be a process for each of those people that spoke to find out how the experts, I guess, is the best I can call them, answer those questions, because it is an important part of the process that we have to go through. And I thank you all for coming and speaking. I think it's interesting, and I think everybody certainly has their personal feelings towards these things. And thank you for coming.
Okay, yeah, and I'd like to thank you all for showing up and commenting on the EIR. And you'll have more opportunity to comment on the EIR and this project in the future. Thank you.
I'd like to ask Alex, when do the comments have to be submitted in writing? When's the last day? And also, when will the new document be available?
The last day to submit comments is 5 p.m. July 17th. As far as the availability of the final EIR, it's a little speculative, but I would say roughly at a minimum 90 days
after that
after
date.
the close.
Okay.
You know, depending on the volume of comments, it may be a little bit longer.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that the audience knew and I knew what the timetable was there. Thank you, Alex.
Oh, okay, with that, we'll take a quick 5-minute break and give everybody a chance to clear out.
Can't be sleeping on there.
I didn't know you were going to come up.
Well, we disagree. You're right.
Okay, we'll go ahead and reconvene our Planning Commission meeting, and we'll go on to hearing item number 2, Metcalf Residence, Bear Creek Association subdivision modification and variance. Okay. Alan, I guess you're up.
I'm up. Alan Bruce, I'm the staff planner for this particular one. I do want to introduce staff. Andy Dyken, he's our engineer on this. This is his first planning commission time here, so he's been with the county about 8 years, and please ask questions away for engineering to put him on the spot. And I do have Rob Olson is right here, it's the applicant. So I'm going to go over this real quickly since you guys have been through quite a bit already. The location, this particular project is in Alpine. It's at the lower, actually real close to the ski area. Alpine Meadows Road is here. The ski area is down in this location. Obviously, the subject parcel is right here. Bear Creek runs along this location right here. This particular subdivision was approved back in 1963. The zoning, it is residential, RS. Open space is located right adjacent to it, which is Bear Creek. So what's being asked is actually a map modification. The existing subdivision has a 30-foot setback that's out there right now. We do have a zoning requirement as well of a 100-foot setback from center line of Bear Creek. So the applicant, it's an existing house, and the applicant would like to do is add an addition to the house with a deck above. So it doesn't meet the 100-foot setback. So what they're looking for is 35 feet to structure and then 33 feet to eave. The garage location, it's a single-story, two-car garage, and there will be a mudroom. There is an entryway right here. And it is within the front setback, and there's a variance to this as well for zoning purposes. It's 14 feet, approximately 14 feet 4 inches. And the existing parking, there's paving, and this is a non-maintained, it's a private road that runs at this location. The right-of-way is right here. So right now, the property owners park at this location. They're trying to make it right. This is the proposal. This is the existing house. This is the two-story structure I was talking about. There's a small gully that's in this location, so they're planning on to straddle it. This gives an overview directly onto the structure with the house. This gives you an idea. This is the gully I was talking about. They're planning on to span it, so there's minimal grading associated with it. This gives you an overview of the site. The applicant has gone to the HOA. They have approved it on their end. They're waiting for the decision by the Planning Commission. Outlined in the blue here is where the garage would be located. And you can see here, again, the gully that they're planning on to span over. Staff did review the site. We did look at the surrounding areas. There are other houses that do encroach into the Bear Creek area, the creek, as well as the front map setback. And because of the slope, is about a 29% slope on this particular site. You can see right here with Bear Creek so close, there's quite a bit of granite that goes up at the top here, and there's a pad here. So they're planning on to use basically the same area to minimize, again, the grading. So staff is recommending approval of this particular project. We are requesting that it be categorically exempt by Class 3 and Class 5. Approve the setback into the map setback at 14 feet 4 inches, 11 feet to eave, and that's associated with the variance, and as well as a stream course setback of 35 feet to the structure, 33 feet to eave. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer it, and I do have the applicant.
Yeah, the map is small scale, so I had to get a magnifying glass. But see, it looks like the house is already within the 100-foot setback, so we're just talking about additional footage, right, that would be within, I mean, additional, or, you know, less, I guess, less setback than what we have now.
Good question. They do, you're right, the map is extremely small. Right here, it shows the 100-foot setback. So you could see the majority of it already is within the 100-foot setback. They have non-conforming rights, so they could actually exercise those rights, but they want to encroach just a little bit more. It's about 4 feet is what I recall. because it's encroaching a little bit further, we'd have to go through this process, the variance process. Something else I should alert the commission as well as the public, it's outside the floodplain. That's something we do analyze. So, obviously you can't do that. So we had some analysis done with that as well. It's outside, this particular project with the addition is outside the floodplain.
Okay, thank you.
And Alan, because you're saying the 4 feet and that's eaves, but from foundation, what is it? 2-foot eaves?
It's 33 feet from center line of the creek here, 35 feet, and then 33 feet to eave. So it's actually an addition with the deck above. And let me see if I can go to the elevation, give you an idea of that particular one. Here you can see the addition, that's the deck above. That's the proposed addition.
Okay.
And I do have the applicant here, Rob Olson.
Yeah, the applicant would like to speak.
Hello, I'm Rob Olson. I'm an architect and for the Metcalfs, but I also live in Bear Creek, so very familiar with the neighborhood and other projects that are kind of like this. If you have any questions for me, that'd be great. Otherwise, I appreciate you listening about this project.
Do you know that distance of the additional encroachment for?
It's probably less than 4 feet, as Alan said. I mean, the current encroachment is, it's got a living room upstairs, and then down below is kind of a full height crawl space. And what we're doing is taking the existing deck that's there right now, adjacent to that living space, demoing that, building some habitable area, and putting a deck back that's waterproof above it. And it's probably not more than 4 feet, it's probably a little less.
Because how much is the deck overhang? Because
the deck overhang's about 9 inches. It's a lesser shadow line, just for cost purposes with overhangs and stuff.
So it's a little less, what, 3.5 feet, less than 3.5 feet?
Yeah. Let's see if I can
over.
So right here is the current living space, and you can see this is the center line of the creek. Here's the difference between the eave, the shorter, and then here's living space. So if you kind of take that point with the radius, it's probably around 2 feet or 3 feet,
From the foundation.
From the foundation, exactly.
Right.
And then the overhang, like I said, it's about 9 inches going towards the creek. Just to give a little shadow line to break up the mass. But the mass-wise, it's already kind of there with the deck. It's got wood storage below. Does that kind of answer?
Yeah, and then from the other side, since it's a private road going in and see this normal setback lines, there it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the road. There's a bridge here across, and then the 30-foot setback is here, and you can see I've shaded kind of what part is into the mapped setback.
And we didn't receive any letters of objections from the neighbors, so.
Correct. I actually got 4 letters from McElroy, Sipes and Sipes. They have 2 lots, Pedley, and up here the Tullys. They all gave letters of support. There was a neighbor down the street that always kind of has issues with projects. He asked for full plans and he didn't come back with anything. He reserved the right to get back to me, but he is yet to get back to me.
He didn't.
But we did do neighbor notification and all that through Bear Creek Planning Committee. They give preliminary approval, and then the next approval will be construction document approval, where you kind of show all your, things change with structural elements and stuff like that, which they really don't normally. So the neighbors have been notified at least twice, once for this and once for Bear Creek.
Okay, thank you. Currently, no other questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I'll close it off to the public and bring it back to the commission.
Alan, could you put what you want us to do back up?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we follow staff's recommendation and approve the 3 approvals that are listed in the agenda, which is the subdivision map modification, the variance, and the variance to the water course, along with the findings and the subdivision map modification 1 through 5. What's that?
Exempt for that.
We need to deal with the first one, which is CEQA,
I'm sorry, I didn't,
that it's exempt.
determine the project categorically exempt from environmental review under CEQA pursuant to provisions of section 15303 and 15305 of the California Environmental Quality Act, guidelines in section 18.36.050A and section 18.36.070A.1.
We're trying to see if you need eye exam.
Of the Placer County Environmental Review Ordinance Class 3, new construction or conversion of small structures, and Class 5 minor alterations and land use limitations.
I second that.
You need to wear your glasses when you drive.
I wasn't looking through my glasses.
That's a problem.
No, I didn't. I wouldn't see it at all if I hadn't. Those are for reading up close.
Okay, Kathy, to move ahead. Roll call.
I'm not sure. Yes.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Rikus?
Yes.
Mr. Denine?
Yes, the motion carries. And if anyone that's maybe not here wants to appeal, they have 10 calendar days to appeal, and they appeal or file the appeal at the planning department, and the amount, they'll tell you at the counter.
300 and
No, 500.
Oh, is it
500? It's over 500.
500 cents.
Okay, with that, we'll close our commission meeting, and
I thought we had one other item.
Oh, that was a
we
consent.
took care of
It was, the notice didn't get out in time, so we continued that.
Oh, okay.